Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Well, furniture maker Paul Downs has encountered many challenges within his business, and his decision to chronicle a particularly difficult year in the business resulted in the publication of the book Boss Life: Surviving My Own Small Business. Paul joins us now to discuss the realities of running a small business. But Paul, how were you first introduced to the world of business?
Oh boy, my first commercial transaction happened at age 12 when I tried to sell a model airplane I had made to a local toy store, and that was not a success. And my business career took a little bit of a hiatus until I got out of college at age 22 when I started making furniture, and that business has done much better.
So provide us with an insight into your custom furniture business today. What's your niche?
Today, after 38 years, my business specializes in building big conference tables and boardroom tables. And it's kind of an unusual specialty in woodworking, not one that's easy to get into. But in 2003, I had an extremely lucky moment when a table that I had built for a client in 1998, and I had a picture of it on my website, that picture was chosen by Google to be the top search result when people searched for boardroom table. So all of a sudden, my business took a turn from mostly working with local clients in the Philadelphia area to one that serviced customers all over the entire North American continent. And we've also worked with just about everybody you could possibly imagine, from the highest limits of government and industry all the way down to a local police station or school board.
The opening paragraph of your book, Boss Life: Surviving My Own Small Business, contains an enlightening statement which reads, "Unfortunately, I'm no business genius and I'm not rich. My story has neither tidy conclusions nor a triumphant ending." So with that in mind, how would you describe your entrepreneurial journey?
Well, I should give your listeners some context in what the book is and why we're even talking about it and how it came to be written. So I've had a couple of extremely lucky moments in my life, and the first one was when Google found my website and put me in the conference table business. But in 2009, I actually had stumbled onto the opportunity to become a business writer. And I started writing for the New York Times, which is one of the most prominent newspapers in the world, in their business section about specifically my struggles to run a small business during what then was a very difficult recession. And I was different from most business journalists in that I didn't come from a position of success and then trying to share my path to riches. I was just sort of every man trying to figure it out as I go, and I've never made any claim to be anything other than a good craftsman. And I think that a lot of people who are good at making something or doing something and then try to build a business around it run into this situation where you're good at the thing you do, but then the business part around it is quite difficult. And that's who I was. And so I was writing for the Times, and I ended up writing for them for about 4 years. And in the middle of that, I was approached by a book agent who said, "Hey, do you want to write a book? I'll be your agent." And so my decision was, okay, you've got the opportunity to fill 300 pages with whatever you feel like. What are you going to do? And my thought was that I would write the book that I'd always wanted to read and I had never seen from anybody, and which was about what it's actually like to be the boss of a small business. And it's not easy. It's often baffling, and you're presented with challenge after challenge, and you never really know what's going to show up on any given day. So that's the book. When I wrote it, in 2012 and 13, I was definitely not very successful, but I wasn't a failure either. I was just in the middle there, somewhere like so many businesses. And I didn't want to present myself as, hey, I'm so rich, I'm so smart, if you do this, you're going to be a billionaire. That's just not how it goes for most people. So my book is about a year in my business, a very difficult year. in which I struggle with a huge number of different problems. And that was my life. I'm just giving you a portrait of my life. The interesting thing is, in the 8 years since it's been published, I've been contacted by hundreds of readers around the world who say to me, hey, I own a small business too, and I'm struggling with it, and it's really hard, and I had no idea that I was the only one who was having a difficult time. And thank you so much for writing this book, because I felt alone and I felt hopeless, and now I know, no, it's much more normal to have a hard time with business than to end up as the next Bill Gates or Steve Jobs.
In the book, you talk about the struggles that you have between your business and personal life, and specifically the struggles regarding your son. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. One of the things that I had never seen in a business book was just a business owner talking about how difficult it is to leave business at business. That when I always think about my business all day, every day, all night, worry about it. And in my situation, as I describe it in the book, I also have a very difficult challenge at home. I have a severely autistic son. And so part of the difficulty of the year of business that I described was just dealing with trouble at home as well as trouble in the business. And again, after having written and published the book, I heard from many, many business owners who described a situation that was similar. It wasn't always autism. It wasn't always their children. But almost everybody has personal struggles. Bad things happen to you. And it affects you as a business owner. And it affects your approach and your ability to deal with trouble if your bandwidth is already being absorbed by something that's happening at home. And in my desire to present an honest portrait of what it's like to run a small business, I wanted to include that. And that's why I talked about all that.
And of course, Paul, so many of our listeners this morning will be able to relate to what you're saying and the struggles and challenges associated with running a small business. But over your career, have you created and formulated a particular approach to solving problems as they arise today?
Yes, and I think that the most important thing that anybody who's in their office wondering how they're going to make payroll or wondering how they're going to deal with a terrible customer and they feel alone and they feel stressed, you have to reach out and start talking to other business owners and get some help. And this is something that it took me decades to figure out. And when I finally started reaching out to other people for help, that's when things started to go better. So I've been able to incorporate a bunch of good ideas I got from other business owners. I joined a business group where I meet with CEOs regularly, and through writing for the Times and interviews and letters, and I'm also just making a point now of always talking to other business owners and saying, hey, what do you do? How do you do it? What works? What doesn't? That's the most important thing that I can give to your audience, which is do not sit in your office and weep in your beer. Get out there and get some help, and that will maximize your chance of success.
If you had to go back and do it all over again, how would you approach it differently next time?
If I was doing it today, it would just be a completely different experience. I would have access to every kind of business idea there was, plus I would have the benefit of email and websites and modern spreadsheets and Google Docs and Google Sheets and ways of storing and processing information that simply didn't exist when I started. So if I started again in 1986, it probably wouldn't be much different because I would have had to ride through all those technological changes. If I started today, what I would do would be try to get my ideas hammered down as thoroughly as possible, because there's one huge difference between starting a small business today than back then. And that is that if you're doing a business that is anything other than a very local business, like, okay, if you open up a pub, you're going to be dealing with the people within 5 miles of you no matter what you do. That's not changed much. But if you opened up a furniture making business like I did, and you put up your first website and you try to come up with your first price list, what you would be doing would be entering a marketplace where your offering is instantly compared to everybody else's offering. In other words, you're going to put up your first website, and your clients are going to be one click away from the best website there is. And that's a whole different ballgame. So I would say that one of the things that's really important for new business owners to do is to figure out how the business works. Now, I never went to work for anybody because I'm just stubborn that way. And so I had to stumble through a lot of basic things about how my industry worked that I just did not know. And if I was trying to get the business going today and I had that same level of ignorance about how furniture is made and sold, I would fail immediately because all of my clients would have better choices instantly available to them. So that's the biggest piece of advice I would do would be you've got to spend some time understanding what business you're in, who your competition is, and what you bring to the table that will allow you to get it off the ground and amass enough experience that you can be a credible competitor.
And Paul, talk to us about why you think transparency is a strength in business. You spoke earlier about the importance of talking to other business owners about your problems, but how important is it to talk to your staff about them?
I said nothing to my employees for a long time, but then in 2008, when the first big recession hit, at that time I had a partner, and we were in deep trouble that summer of 2008. We were already in debt. The company was losing money, and it was not at all clear that we were going to survive. And my partner and I were 50-50 partners, and he was an older gentleman who had run several businesses before. And his theory was you never tell the employees anything. Just don't, which is pretty normal. And I watched as over the course of that summer and fall as not only our business started doing badly, but the economy fell apart too. And we had 22 people at that time, and it was pretty clear to all of the employees that there was trouble coming. They could see that the phone was ringing, and they'd pick up the phone and somebody was like, "Where's my money?" And that's not a good look. And it was pretty clear that we were running out of work and that we were having difficulty completing the work we had. Everybody knew it was bad. But my partner prevented me from telling everybody how bad it was. And then we got to a point where it really hit the fan, and I had to call everybody together and say, listen, we're out of work, we're out of money, and I got to lay off most of you. And I did that. And after that, for the remaining ones, I had to say we weren't actually out of work. We had just enough to do, keep 10 people busy as opposed to 25. So I laid off a lot of them. And then you've got the other ones who are there the next day, and you got to say something to them. And the promise I made to them was, I will never lie to you. I will never conceal to you how bad it is, because we've just gone through a terrible experience of you seeing all your coworkers go. I hated not being able to talk about it with anybody, and I'm just not going to do that again. To hell with my partner. He was not happy about that, but that's the promise I made to my people, most of whom still work for me today, and that's just something I've kept to myself. Now, the interesting thing was, as trouble arrived in subsequent years, and, we've had good moments, you have bad moments. When trouble arrived and I told people, hey, I think that trouble is arriving, this is what it looks like, this is what I'm going to do to try to get us out of it, I found that there was a huge desire on the part of my workforce to help. They wanted to keep their jobs. They wanted to not leave and get fired and go work someplace else. They liked the work that we were doing. And so all of a sudden I realized that when you get everybody on the same page with whatever situation the company is in, now you're able to tap your employees as a resource.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Paul Downs, author of the book Boss Life, Surviving My Own Small Business, and I've no doubt that many of our listeners will resonate with Paul's experience.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.